The first month of the Overwatch League has gone by in a flash. The APAC qualifiers for the Kickoff clash have led to this moment. It's tournament time, baby. Who establishes a big lead in the standings? Who comes up short and disappoints us all? All of that and more is about to be explored. Before that though, how about we build upon the hype a little bit with some predictions as to what's to come. This double elimination bracket tournament features 12 awesome teams, 4 in APAC and 8 in North America. NA in particular is super hype since it will actually be on LAN in Dallas. Nothing hits quite the same as a LAN tournament, you know? The energy is going to be through the roof, and with how chaotic things have been, there's no way of telling what happens next. I'm gonna start with my North American bracket, then do APAC after. Timestamps for the start of both tournaments will be found in the description. First up though, in NA, we have the Shock and the Justice. No offense to Washington, but their ups and downs leave a lot to be desired. And if you're going off record and map differential, their opponent is literally the most consistent in the entire league, which in my eyes makes this a similar situation to the Florida game last week, as I believe the Shock will be taking this in a 3-0. The Shock have just been so dominant, only one match was truly close, everything else has kind of just come relatively easy for this group, and it's tough to see that changing against an inconsistent Justice. The Shock are well-rounded, they're disciplined, and they have all the tools in the world to not only outplay the Justice backline, but also the DPS, so it should be easy for them. Next up though, we've got the Atlanta Reign versus the Florida Mayhem, and this is a fun little rematch of opening week. The last time these two played, it came down to the wire, and a lot has changed since then, you know? Doomfist has become less viable, the Atlanta Reign have been showing some clear struggles, and Florida have gained some confidence. When you combine all of these factors, this might not be a close game. The Reign have been moving more towards stuff they're less practice on, and the results do show. They're coming off a poor week. They have less experience on the rush and the Winston dive compared to a lot of other teams, including the Mayhem. Florida themselves have proven to be quite versatile throughout the qualifiers. They're comfortable on a wide range of characters, and just to sweeten the deal, they clearly have been the hotter team as of late. While I do prefer the Reign from like a roster standpoint, they're definitely the underdogs heading into this matchup. It definitely feels like they're trying to ride out a wave right now. I'm not super confident with their play, so my pick is going to be the Florida Mayhem in a 4-map contest. Florida have been the better overall team, and the meta has shifted more in their favor. Revenge is in the water, folks. Prepare yourselves. Coming up next is the Houston Outlaws and LA Gladiators. I'm intrigued about this. In my honest opinion, the Outlaws have the weaker composition selections compared to their opponents. They love the Doomfist and the Reaper, but I don't think they work that well for them. Well, at least in this matchup, right? They've done well on the season, but the Glads run that superior Winston comp. They're a very strong team. They're starting to dabble into Rush as well. So Houston's only other choice if the Doom isn't working out is likely the Zarya comp, which clearly needs some work. I have concerns they're going to fall behind if the Glads figure them out early on, and considering that the Glads willingly selected Houston as their first round opponent, you'd have to imagine this is likely. Additionally, I have a lot more faith in the Glads backline. While Lastro hasn't been terrible on main support, I don't think he's had to face a combo as strong as Funny Astro and Skewed at that main support position. I strongly believe that the Glads backline is going to make the higher value plays, which is why in the end I'm picking the Glads in a 3-1 contest. Despite the reverse sweep struggles and all, the Glads still are more disciplined, they have more star power, yada yada yada. It could be a decent game, but I think that the Glads did pick Houston for a reason. The last game on day 1 of North America is Dallas versus Toronto, and yeah, I'm not expecting much. Dallas recently beat this team into a bloody pulp, and I see no reason why it won't happen again. If anything, there's more reason than ever to believe that this is going to be the case. With Finale and Muse somehow being nowhere to be found recently, Toronto have even less options at their disposal, and against Dallas, you need all the help that you can get. They will fail miserably in the Zarya mirror, it's already been proven. Hanbin has been MVP level so far, and if you challenge him, you're gonna regret it. And outside of that backline, I think that Dallas have a clear edge position by position. This seems like a mismatch to me and a pretty easy win for Dallas, so I say they take it in a sweep. There's not much to say here, I'm afraid. It's kind of a lopsided matchup. So how about we get into day 2, where the hypotheticals begin? Let's talk winner semifinals. First would be a showdown between the Mayhem and the Shock, and I have to admit, I'm a bit curious to see if the Mayhem can push this heavily favored Shock team. Things like LAN and low expectations can have profound effects on your performance. If Florida come out of the gates with confidence, maybe the Shock end up having to earn this thing. Florida are a scary dark horse in this tournament, but in general, you still have to imagine that in the end, the Shock should be taking care of business, since pretty much all of their players aren't strangers to LAN as well, and have been ridiculously clutch not just throughout the league so far, but their entire careers. And with them pretty much blasting through everybody they've played so far in the qualifiers, I'm willing to bet that they take care of this in, let's say, 4 maps at most. San Fran just have the greater firepower and general tournament experience. Florida are solid, and I do think they're scary, but this is one opponent they may not be ready for. Now for a pretty epic rematch. It's Dallas versus LA time. No matter the score, I'd like to think that this will be a great game since there's so much talent lining up in a single lobby. However, after the recent LA chokes, I've lost some trust in their ability to clutch out big games such as this one. But that's not all. Generally speaking, the Fuel have improved since that previous meeting. They've started to embrace the Zarya comps more, and it's had a big time effect on their opponents. They've been destroying people. And to be completely honest with you, I don't have a reason to believe the Glads will be any more ready for it than they were the last time. And I really don't know how many teams have been embracing Zarya in North America in scrims or anything like that, so I feel like the Glads might be under-practiced against this comp. Yeah, they have the film to study and everything, but film versus experience, those are two different things. So I'm going to be taking the Fuel in 4 maps. The Glads' confidence has been waning the last couple of weeks. I especially felt that way after the London game that they definitely could have lost. If you're ill-prepared for a specific comp and you don't have the maximum confidence, Dallas will murder you. I mean, it won't be close. So GG go next, I suppose. Looking at my hypothetical start of the losers bracket, we've got a weird one potentially on the horizon. Just imagine if we get Washington versus Atlanta again. We're talking about two of the most up and down teams. This will either be some sort of ridiculous blowout 3-0 or a 5-map thriller. No exceptions. And I, for one, am leaning towards the latter. And it's for one simple reason. Neither team has looked all that inspiring as of late. I've seen this story play out so many times. Like, it just ends up being a clown fiesta when two teams lacking confidence clash with each other like this. As for who I'm going with in this hypothetical matchup, my money's on the Justice. I don't know, man. I don't like the way that the Reign look currently. The Winston comp is the best thing to run in NA for most teams, and this is the biggest source of comfort for the Justice. Additionally, the Justice DPS, at least in my opinion, have impressed a bit more, and I believe that they're going to be the ones to make the huge plays when it truly matters. I'm hoping for a fun match, but a clown fiesta could be imminent, folks. Now on to Houston and Toronto. Despite the Defiant coming out on the winning end of the previous duel during week 1, I believe that the Outlaws have progressed a lot since then. They're maybe a little one-dimensional still, but I feel like Toronto are in worse shape and they're also kind of one-dimensional. Not only are Toronto missing their more favorable flex DPS, but also the tank that gives them the best odds of winning. And they'll be playing a full-strength Houston team. There's a good chance, at least in my eyes, that Pelican has more of an impact in this matchup this go-around, as I don't have as much confidence in Although as I do with Finale to counteract his explosiveness. My pride is going to be 3-1 in favor of the Outlaws. The Defiant are in a vulnerable state currently, and the Outlaws should take advantage. Looking at day 3, I can only hope that we see a meeting between the Fuel and Shock in the upper bracket finals. They didn't get the chance to meet in the qualifiers, and they've clearly been the best two teams so far. We need this to happen. I mean, seriously, it would be glorious. This is an epic battle of the future versus the present, and this is a superstar slugfest. Let's call it how it is. Playmaking is not a concern, but one might argue that both teams are better at some things than the other. For example, you likely prefer Hanbin's play over Kaluj because his Zarya has been suffocating, but at the same time, the Shock arguably possess the hottest flex support in the game, and I don't really know how the Fuel stop proper either. Do they have an answer for the superstar rookie? Both sides have pros and cons, so honestly, this might end up coming down to coaching instead. Do the Shock have the answer for the Fuel's incredible Zarya comp? So far, literally no one has stopped it. Hanbin's knowledge and discipline on this character is unparalleled. The Shock need a crazy game plan to try and catch Dallas off guard. But with how intelligent and how much of a juggernaut this opponent is, surprises may not be in the cards. I get the feeling this one will be more about charging head-on using what you believe in, and in that kind of battle, I ever so slightly prefer the Fuel. So I'm going to be taking them in what hopefully is an epic 5-mapper. Playing the game their own way is what made Dallas so special 1 year prior, and compared to the majority of North America, they've been doing the same thing again this year. I believe Dallas will set the trend in this region as more people begin to follow their lead, just as we saw last year. Plus, in my honest opinion, San Fran are overdue for a loss. It's time. You know what else it's time for? Hypothetical lower bracket rounds 2 and 3. Looking at a potential Justice and Mayhem matchup, it's very tough to imagine this one going any differently than what we saw last week, where Florida were clearly superior. Their team play was simply stronger, the support line was making bigger plays, and the DPS stepped up big time. Now, of course, if the Justice get hot, as we've seen already this year, then maybe this is a different story, but I believe that Florida do have this, as it's a bit more risky to go with a Justice team who are so up and down. I suspect that Washington will make it feel closer than 1 week ago, but Florida are the last of their concerns at the moment, which is a problem. There's too much to prepare for. And maybe it's just me, but I kind of feel like Florida are about to go crazy at this LAN tournament. If my bracket somehow held up until this point, it's not going to happen. Houston and the Glads would meet up for a second time this tournament. And honestly, I don't see much changing. Again, LA picked the Outlaws for a reason. Houston are filled with high-end talent, but the way they play, in my opinion at least, just won't work against a top-level team. If anything, the second meeting might be even more lopsided, so this go-around, I'm picking the Glads in a sweep. Again, the Gladiators have the compositional advantage and the stronger backline, and based off how they've played this year, there's simply more reason to have confidence in them. But the talks on the LA Gladiators won't be ending quite yet, because immediately after the Houston match, they're getting paired up with Florida in this scenario, and the Mayhem could give them some trouble. They're versatile. I said their teamwork was good before and everything, and they face just a lot less pressure as the underdog. They're not expected to do anything. Los Angeles, on the other hand, they've basically had title aspirations since the beginning of this year, so the Mayhem are no joke. Any team with real expectations could meet their match in this situation. The Gladiators are absolutely the better team, but we've seen this movie play out before. Upset potential is most certainly in the air. However, I do believe in the Gladiators to get through this in, let's say, 4 maps, and my main reason is the Glads tend to be pretty good at exposing weaknesses against opponents they're favored against, and there happens to be one issue Florida have consistently faced in their losses. That, my friends, is heavily focused dives onto Sir Majed. If Houston and Atlanta can do this, then I have no doubt the Glads could as well. I know things haven't been easy for this group, but they're still competent, and I think that they could execute some pretty clean dives. The Glads can kind of put a stop to most of Florida's shenanigans. If Checkmate goes Tracer, Kevster's there to put a stop to it. If Hydron tries to get it going on Widow, he'll be running into Ans. You want to depend on Majed to gain an edge with his Ana? Good luck, because your opponent is Shu. Bumpy ride or not, the Gladiators are still worth investing confidence into when they're against an opponent that definitely isn't as strong as them. Is it worth investing confidence into them in a potential lower bracket final with the Shock though? Well, that's more up for debate. Because wow, this is a scary demon to face. We know they can play the Shock close. That's not the issue. The problem is when you get more into the nitty-gritty. The question on everybody's mind is, can the Glads close out a series? The Dallas and Shock game showed some sloppy play in potential closeout maps, and until they prove themselves, why should I be trusting in them? Krusty-led teams are so disciplined. They can beat excellent rosters by simply making less mistakes. They don't even need to overpower you. It sounds silly to say this, seeing as the Shock are the ones with a bunch of rookies, but it's the truth. They don't overcommit. Because the Glads do match up well talent-wise, I'm gonna say that this is also a 5-map series, but it'll go in favor of the Shock without having to reverse sweep this time. All they have to do is wait for their opportunity, folks. Force the Glads to slip up just as they did the last time. If Finn continues to play out of his mind and the Shock play it smart, I see no reason why they don't advance. This means that in the end, yeah, I'm going with the boring, unfun match between the Shock and the Fuel. No surprises to be found. And just like the first time, I'm going to say that Dallas pull through. This time in a 4-2 effort. I strongly believe that the Fuel are setting a trend that not a lot of teams are used to yet. They can play the standard that everybody else does thanks to their deep rotation, but they have a seemingly unstoppable Zarya comp. If anybody could figure out a countermeasure to them, it's definitely Krusty and his squad, but I kind of prefer the vets in this scenario. They've gone through more this season. The Shock on paper have the more intimidating DPS and flex support, but teamwork makes the dream work in such a high-level matchup, and that's where the Dallas Fuel stand tall. The Fuel have gone through a lot more challenges, more trial and error. The Shock haven't been pushed enough. They haven't faced any real adversity outside of that one reverse sweep, and this, in my opinion, is going to be their wake-up call. Also, the Fuel have that home crowd advantage going for them, so consider me a believer as they go on to win the Kickoff Clash. Alright, here's my North American bracket in full for you. Dallas will end up being my champion. Do I have a super particular reason? No, not really. I really like their players, essentially. I think that they're very trustworthy in these scenarios, and I think that Dallas are just playing with some supreme confidence right now, so why not? Plus, the league has been dummy unpredictable so far. Anything can happen, so why not go with a team that I trust? Enough about NA though. It's time for APAC. The Fusion versus the Spark lead us off. These two literally just played an epic 5-mapper last week, so they're fresh in each other's minds, and they definitely match up well with each other. Both teams have certain win conditions to meet. For the Fusion, it revolves around getting faster picks and protecting Aim God better. There are a lot of fights in that Spark game where he was forced into fighting from unfavorable positions. He'd get picked off first, and the pressure would sometimes lead to an ill-advised nano boost. He can't be playing so close to his tanks to try and stay alive. If the Fusion can look at the tape, peel for him a little better, and increase their offensive tempo, I think they're going to win this. Meanwhile, the Spark need to continue pressuring Aim God or ensure at the very least that Irony continues to make the bigger splash. This might be the most 50-50 match of the entire tournament. I genuinely cannot tell who is going to win. If we're going off what last week gave us, the Fusion did choke to a certain extent, right? That map 5 was practically thrown away. And with a week to focus on the film and the same opponent, I have a strong belief that Philly will do better. So, it may seem kind of strange to some, but my pick is a 3-2 in favor of the Fusion. Now maybe there's some Philly hopium here, but they did show me they can put themselves in the right position to win. It's all on making some smarter composition choices, increasing their tempo, and enabling Aim God. If they can almost beat the Spark while struggling to complete these objectives, I have faith that they could win this game if they clean up their play a little. This could be a bloodbath. Get your popcorn ready. Speaking of getting your popcorn ready, Seoul vs Shanghai is equally as interesting. Not only is this also a rematch from last week, but Seoul and Shanghai are never easy to get a read on. Shanghai are not only pretty weird during tournament matches, but they've also just been dealing with a lot of general craziness this year. I can't imagine playing away from your own HQ on ridiculously high ping with COVID issues in the air and still managing to win. This team is insane for managing to be this clutch, but this opponent will not be easy to take down. Despite beating them 3-1 last week, Seoul pushed them pretty hard. The two sides love to embrace dive, and they just so happen to be very strong on it. The DPS on both sides have run rampant all season, and this contest won't be any different. It's a hard game to get a grasp on. However, I'm a strong believer that Shanghai are a good counter to the Dynasty. Seoul often rely on Prophet and Fitz to carry, but what happens when they run into DPS who are equally as good? It suddenly becomes a lot harder to win since Shanghai generally have the more reliable playmakers, especially at support. So long as they don't get screwed over, I believe that this is going the way of the Shanghai Dragons in a close 5-map affair. The Dragons are more proven in the clutch. That's my main reason that I like them. Seoul should take this a bit closer than the last time, since they have this team fresh in their minds, but when push comes to shove, the defending champs are more trustworthy. In my hypothetical round 2, we've got some more exciting rematches that we could be looking forward to. We'd be left with Philly versus Shanghai in the upper bracket, and Seoul versus Hangzhou in the losers. It's only been a few weeks, but the potential Philly versus Shanghai face-off feels a lot different compared to the first one. The Fusion have cooled off significantly, and the Dragons have won 5 straight. I don't see this playing out like the last time. The Dragons are getting used to their not-so-ideal conditions and have already proven multiple times that they can overcome adversity this year. Meanwhile, the Fusion have shown mixed results while getting pushed, as a lot of their tough games have actually ended in losses. It might be argued the Dragons have the better consistency due to their experience, as they live for these moments. And if we really want to dive into this deep, the Dragons are not a team who usually loses to the same team twice. It's a rare occurrence. I'm going to say the Dragons take this in 4. As the league changes, the Dragons do not. Tournaments like this are what they live for, and Philly's ups and downs make them feel not as good. Meanwhile, the Spark and Dynasty is more of a toss-up. Hangzhou have been one of the hottest teams in the league, even achieving the #1 seed for this tournament. Although, even though the Spark won the last meeting between these two, Seoul have improved. They're sticking to what they know now, and the results speak for themselves. It'll be a bit closer than the last one. I know the Spark are nasty and all, but Seoul are playing a lot more Winston now, so they're going to be tough to beat. They have the tools needed to counter the Spark at DPS, and Smurf's going to be feeling a lot more like himself. And I'm going to go out and have a bold prediction of sorts and say that Creative outshines Irony in the Ana department to give his team the ultimate advantage as the Seoul Dynasty win the series 3-2. It might sound ridiculous to have the Spark not even make the second round, but I do believe that some luck has been involved with their hot start. I'm still not entirely convinced they have what it takes to make a deep run. From there, my bracket would have the Fusion and Dynasty face off in the losers final. Thanks to last week, I think it's safe to say that the Dynasty have the better consistency. Philly cooled off in week 2, and Seoul showed a lot of the same consistency. And if their previous meeting is evidence of anything at all, the Dynasty are truly more in their element. And one big problem I see with this matchup is the Fusion have a very similar mindset to the Dynasty. They embrace the Winston and the Tracer, which only makes winning harder for them. When Smurf and Prophet are on their signature heroes, it's tough to win. Philly would need to force Seoul into playing more Zarya, but even then, Seoul were better in that matchup too, right? I have no idea what the Fusion can do. They have to elevate their play significantly or hope that the Dynasty ends up waking up on the wrong side of the bed. So in my opinion, the Dynasty do end up walking away with a 3-1 series win. To me, Seoul are better. The Fusion have a lot of exciting pieces, but their inconsistency makes them kinda tough to trust. Plus, I mean, the Fusion are usually cursed in these scenarios anyway. Seems like a pretty likely outcome if you ask me. If my outcomes up until this point held true, Seoul would once again face off with Shanghai to decide the winner of a tournament. And if you ask me, history's about to repeat itself. The Dragons get the better of Seoul historically in APAC tournaments. I don't make the rules, that's how it goes. And guess what? I'm going to say this finals won't be close. My pred is an anticlimactic 4-1 in favor of the Dragons. This year has been very strange. APAC has been all over the place. I mean, lots of fun games. So what would be more fitting than throwing a curveball during the most important game of the whole stage? It's destiny. But also, I just have a really good feeling about the Dragons going into this tournament. I don't know exactly what it is. I know they haven't been all that great so far this year, but that constant clutch factor just makes me feel like they're gonna pull this off again against all of the odds. And I mean, they've had Seoul's number for quite a long time, and after beating them in round 1, they should just breeze right through them. I know it's very un-Shanghai-like to dominate in a tournament finals, but APAC in general has been weird so far, so why not continue the trend? No matter what the situation, in the Dragons I trust. So, those are going to be my APAC predictions. Here's the overview of the bracket for you. I'd be lying to you if I said I was confident. Anyone could be the best in the East on any given day. Who knows what happens? What I'm hoping for the most is APAC continuing to deliver. It's been so much fun to watch so far, and I'd like nothing more than to see some good matches. Predictions are all in good fun, it's just part of making content. What I'm really hoping for is an action-packed week, regardless of who wins or loses. Hopefully some good times are ahead of us. And with that said, that's gonna do it. If you're hyped for this tournament, let me know what your preds are looking like down in the comments below. And if you enjoyed today's video, hitting like and subscribe would be greatly appreciated. And until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.